On February 9th, 2025, a series of gunshots tore through a quiet apartment in Big Fork, Montana, triggering what appeared to be an immediate, heroic act of armed defense. A young woman was startled from her sleep by the sound of bullets passing through her walls. Standing in the room was her closest friend, Jeremiah Daniel Starr, who raised his own weapon and returned fire, claiming he was defending her life from an active physical attack. Actually, let me rephrase that. He was not returning fire. There was no shooter outside the window. The weapon in his hand was the only firearm that discharged that night. The savior and the predator were the exact same person.
This staged gunfight was not an isolated incident of sudden instability. It was the calculated climax of a high-tech digital stalking campaign that had been systematically executed over the course of nearly 3 years. The individual who held the gun was the same individual who had spent years sending her highly targeted anonymous threats. The case of Jeremiah Daniel Starr is a study in what behavioral analysts call the proxy rescue loop, a manipulation tactic where an offender fabricates a high-stakes crisis for the sole purpose of posing as the victim's indispensable protector. To understand how this deception was sustained for over 1,000 days, we have to look at the baseline of the relationship. Jane Doe, the pseudonym used in federal court documents, regarded Starr as her best friend. In the close-knit rural community of Big Fork, trust is often given freely. The victim went to work, spent time with her family, and maintained a predictable routine. But that routine began to dissolve when she received her first anonymous message. The text messages were deeply personal. They contained details about her location, her daily schedule, and her personal associations. The sender made it clear that she was being constantly watched. In moments of panic, the victim did what any reasonable person would do. She turned to her social circle for support. She turned to Jeremiah Starr.
Starr assumed the role of the devoted guardian. He helped her check her windows. He escorted her to her car. He spent hours listening to her fears, providing a sympathetic ear while reinforcing her sense of isolation. The dynamic was simple. The more terrified she became, the closer she drew to him.
But a pattern began to emerge. The threats were highly sophisticated. The sender was not using a standard personal cellular number that could be easily traced by local authorities. Instead, they were using a highly technical method to mask their identity. To maintain his anonymity, Starr constructed a multi-layered digital architecture. He utilized voice-over IP and specialized spoofing applications to generate more than 50 unique burner telephone numbers. Each time he sent a threat, it came from a different source, making it impossible for the victim to simply block the sender.
Furthermore, actually, let me use a more precise term. Consequently,
Starr added an extra layer of operational security. He routed his cellular data traffic through virtual private network protocols, specifically utilizing VPN. By doing so, he hid his true IP address behind a rotating wall of encrypted servers located across the globe. This brings us to a critical bridge statement. By routing every threat through a maze of virtual servers, Starr converted his victim's smartphone into a psychological weapon, ensuring she could never identify the source of her constant anxiety, all while he sat next to her, offering physical safety. For nearly 3 years, this psychological pressure cooker continued.
Jane Doe's mental health deteriorated. The harassment was constant, exhausting, and deliberate, yet the victim constantly rationalized the subtle anomalies in the situation. She noticed that the messages frequently stopped when Starr was asleep beside her, or when they traveled to remote areas of Montana where cell service was non-existent. But she justified these discrepancies. She assumed the stalker was merely watching them from a distance, waiting for Starr to leave. The mind naturally seeks logical explanations to protect itself from a reality that is too devastating to comprehend.
That protective reality completely fractured on February 9th, 2025. While the victim was sleeping,
Starr decided to escalate the Proxy rescue loop to its ultimate physical manifestation. He discharged a firearm inside the apartment, sending bullets into the walls. He then fired rounds outside the building, screaming that they were under active ambush. He claimed he was returning fire to save her life. The Flathead County Sheriff's Department responded to the scene. To the initial responding deputies, it looked like a high-stakes, violent confrontation. But when investigators began to process the physical layout of the apartment, they encountered an immediate geometric discrepancy. The bullet trajectories did not align with Starr's narrative. There were no impact marks originating from the exterior of the building that suggested an incoming shooter. The spent shell casings found outside were ballistically linked to the same weapon fired from the inside. There was no phantom attacker. Every single shot fired that night had originated from the weapon under the direct physical control of Jeremiah Starr. He had staged an active gunfight inside a home while his best friend slept, fully prepared to risk her life to secure his status as her ultimate protector.
The investigation was immediately elevated to the federal level, bringing in the FBI's Billings field office. This was no longer a local harassment dispute. It was a highly complex cyber forensic challenge. The cyber analysts faced a massive hurdle. Starr's digital trail was obscured by 50-plus spoofed phone numbers and the encrypted tunnels VPN. The suspect believed his digital tradecraft was clean. He believed that because his physical IP address was masked, the data could never be tied to his handset. The FBI approached the problem with clinical mathematical precision. They initiated what is known as a transactional metadata reconstruction. The user connects to a VPN. The connection leaves a localized footprint at the cellular service provider level. Every time a spoofed message was transmitted, the investigators mapped the exact millisecond of the transmission, then cross-referenced these timestamps with the raw network connection logs of the local cellular towers in Big Fork.
The math was devastating for Starr. The FBI analyzed over 1,100 distinct IP addresses utilized by the virtual phone numbers. They discovered a phenomenon they categorized as the symmetry deviation. This occurs when a masked IP address makes a connection that perfectly mirrors the physical, location-based tower handshakes of a specific personal device. The data proved that every time a threatening message was sent from a spoofed, VPN-masked number, Starr's personal cell phone was making simultaneous data handshakes with the exact cell tower servicing his current physical location. The virtual traffic locations were scattered across the globe, but the physical access points were identical. The digital mask was stripped away.
In August 2025, facing an airtight technical case compiled by the FBI and prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Cindy Peterson, Jeremiah Daniel Starr pleaded guilty to federal cyberstalking. On January 6, 2026, in Missoula, Montana, U.S. District Judge Dana L. Christensen delivered the final judgment. Starr, then 25, was sentenced to 46 months in federal prison, to be followed by 3 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay $11,890 in restitution. The legal chapter is closed, but the case leaves behind a profound behavioral lesson. Trust is a vulnerability. When we delegate our safety to those who feed on our fear, the line between the protector and the predator ceases to exist. Jeremiah Starr is currently serving his 46-month sentence, but for the victim, the quiet of her Montana apartment remains a space where every shadow must still be questioned, and where the memory of a staged savior remains a permanent reminder of the limits of human trust.